Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have a video talking about the tomes that I have on my shelves to be read. This is a video I've been thinking about because I have, in the past, before I started the YouTube channel, I would just read whatever I was in the mood for reading on my shelves. And so if I had a big old tome I wanted to read, I would just knock it out whenever I wanted. If I want to do 2 tomes in a row, I would. But ever since I've started the channel, I've been scheduling things out to be more even so that I would have enough content and also to read what I was enjoying and things like that. But I haven't been able to tackle as many tomes. And people have different definitions of a tome. I generally say that a book that's over 500 pages I consider a tome, but for the purposes of this video, I'm not just talking about books over 500 pages because it'd be a ridiculously long video because I have a ton of books that are just over 500. So I'm going to be talking about books that are like 700 or 800 pages or more. I'm talking about really long books, like substantially lengthy books to talk about today. And I have them from across the genres. I thought, it'd mostly be sci-fi or fantasy, but I actually have them across the genres to talk about. So I have 10 books that I'll talk about. I intend to get to them, and this video is partially a reminder for myself to try to get to these books, but also I plan to try to knock some of these out in the summer, and then hopefully I'll have that I'll do the longer ones in the summer, and I'll have that momentum going into the fall that I'll be able to get to the other ones. So what are the books that are on this list? Well, let me go ahead and start with the first one I'll talk about, which is To Green Angel Tower by Tad Williams. This is the third book in his Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn trilogy. I read the first 2 books. I enjoyed the first one. It was enjoyable. It was a little slow, but it was enjoyable. I thought the second book was a little bit boring for my taste, but it was okay. I didn't hate it. It just was kind of bland. But this is the third book. It's huge. It's like the length of the first 2 books combined, and it's about 1,100 pages long when you include the glossary, and so I'm a little bit nervous about getting to this one, but for one, I love this cover by Michael Whalen. I think it's a great cover, and also I feel that I just want to get to it, to complete the trilogy so I can have another one completed, and also to be able to see if it really sticks the landing, because people like Brian Lee Durfee have this as I think it's his number 1 or number 2 favorite fantasy novel of all time. So anyway, that's To Green Angel Tower. The second book I have on my list is Ken Follett's Pillars of the Earth. This is a book that is starting to make the rounds on YouTube with book reviewers. I think, of course, Brian Lee Durfee talks about it a lot. Also, Mike from Mike's Book Reviews just recently read it, and actually he reread it and loved it. And I've seen some other book reviewers saying, all right, I'm going to give it a chance too. So it's starting to make the rounds, and I was like, you know what? I do want to get to it this summer. It's a long book. It is itself just shy of 1,000 pages, at least my edition of it. And it's some pretty small print too, but I think I'm going to be interested in it. Apparently it's about building a cathedral in ancient, I want to say it's early England, medieval times England, and I love medieval times, so I'm hoping that I will enjoy this book. I've heard it's got some stuff in it, but hopefully I'll be able to manage that. So there's that book. Then the next one I have is Larry McMurtry's Lonesome Dove. This is a bind-up I got at my local bookstore that was really cheap, that had 3 books. It had Lonesome Dove, Leaving Cheyenne, and The Last Picture Show. I'm talking about Lonesome Dove specifically. In this edition, it's 600 pages, but this has some of the smallest print I have ever seen in a novel. Other than maybe the Bible, I think this has the smallest print I've ever seen, and even then the Bible, I don't know if the Bible has this small print as this version. You can see it's really tiny print. Anyway, so it's a decent, beefy length novel, and I've heard only great things about it, so I'm very interested in getting to it and seeing if the hype is real or fake. The next book I have on my shelves is a classic, a very old classic, and probably the longest book in terms of word count on my list, and that is Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. This was adapted into some of my favorite movies and musicals. Like, I love the movie with Jeffrey Rush and Liam Neeson. I love that movie. I think it's great. And then I also really enjoy the musicals. I've never seen them on Broadway, but I have seen them off Broadway, and I thought it was really good. And I've listened to the score and music to it, so I've been like, I like the story, and this is a beefy book and also pretty small print, so I'm a little bit nervous about that, but should be a good read. Everyone who I know who's read it says it's really good. I'm just a little bit nervous about the length, which is a bit daunting. And that's, of course, the case with all of these. Next, I'm going to talk about two books together that are science fiction books that are kind of tomes. And those are both by Dan Simmons. You have the book Iliad and the book Olympus. These are his science fiction takes on Homer story. You have Iliad, which is based off the Iliad, and then you have Olympus, which is based off of the Odyssey. And these are really decent-sized tomes. One of them's about 700 pages. About 700 pages. The other's almost 900 pages. And so they're decent lengths, but I'm very interested in reading them because I've heard good things about them, and I teach about the Iliad and the Odyssey in my class, and so I'm like, hey, this might be interesting to read to be able to have more context for my students. So we'll see if I enjoy both of those. Next, I have a more classic version of science fiction, and that is Battlefield Earth by L. Ron Hubbard. Now, L. Ron Hubbard is a very controversial figure because of certain things he started, such as Scientology, but he also is known as a science fiction author. And in science fiction, he wrote a bunch of science fiction novels, but he's most famous for Battlefield Earth, which is just a long book. It's almost it's over 1,000 pages, my edition of it, and it's been adapted to movies, and I don't know if it's done a miniseries, but I know a lot of people who talk about it as a great science fiction novel, so I have it, and I'm like, well, I want to read it eventually. The next book on my list. This is interesting because before I started the YouTube channel, I read 2 Tom Clancy books. The first one being The Hunt for October, which is one of my favorite novels of all time. And then the second one being The Cardinal and the Kremlin, which I thought was just okay. And so I haven't really felt energized to read more Tom Clancy, despite the fact that I have other Tom Clancy novels on my shelves. And also, I know friends and family who have read Tom Clancy, so it would be nice to be able to have another book that I can talk with people in person about. I just have been putting it off because A, it's long, the books are long, and B, because Tom Clancy is not necessarily the genre of books that I normally read on the channel, but I want to, expand my genres, expand my audience. So that's why another one on my list is Clear and Present Danger by Tom Clancy, and I believe this one is dealing with the drug war, the war on drugs in Central America and South America. So I'm very interested in getting to that one. This is probably the shortest book on the list. It's only less than 700 pages, but it's still pretty decent length. Tom Clancy is not brief in his books. Whew. Next, I have a fantasy book, which is more of a fantasy history book by George R. R. Martin. It is Fire and Blood. It is the material that they use to adapt House of the Dragon, which is just a terrific fantasy show. And I've had this for probably a couple years now, but I've been reluctant to read it because I've been told it's more of a history book than it is general reading fantasy. But I love the show so much, I'm like, maybe I'll enjoy it anyway. So I do want to get to this one eventually. This one's about just shy of 800 pages by the end of it, so I'll be interested to see how I feel about reading this one. And the final book on my list of huge tomes that I intend to read one day is the one that I'm scared the most to read because it is a scary book and it's an author that I haven't had the best time with, and that is It by Stephen King. This one is about 1,100 pages, and Stephen King, I didn't like the first Dark Tower book, The Gunslinger, just didn't work for me. But this book, I've heard good things about it. I've heard people enjoy it, so I do want to get to it eventually. I'm just a little bit nervous about it, but we'll see how it is. So those are the 10 tomes on my list to be read. These are books that are like about 700 or more pages. Many of these are like 1,000 pages. And I'm not going to commit and say I'll start doing like once a month, but I do want to start getting to these so I can knock them out and get to new tomes, some new tomes. Because I've been avoiding buying huge tomes because I have all these on my shelves, and I just know me. I don't get to them as often as I should. So if you've read any of these books, let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.